So there may well be an altcoin rotation starting very, very soon. But as always, a lot of people won't notice it just yet. Doesn't feel very exciting, but the ETF approval odds have actually skyrocketed. Tether dominance has dropped a little bit now, and Bitcoin has stabilized given what has been happening in the Middle East. But stay tuned until the end because I'm going to showcase two obvious metrics that will help you stay on the right side of the market. And like always, smash the like button if you are still in the game of crypto while the crowd are asleep. You may well do okay because I think a lot of people have given up right now. And let me know if you're catching some trading opportunities like myself. So first and foremost, the obvious in the room is that there is a lot of chatter and talk on a lot of mainstream news, not just this website. And this is a couple of days old now, but we need to talk about catalysts and bottoms and low liquidity into high liquidity and the reaction that could give. And we will talk about that, based off the fact of several ETF filings now over 90% in terms of approval rate, which is obviously, you got to think with the SEC now, it's a lot more positive. We've got to argue that. And as you know, I have been pretty bearish on altcoins and I do trade them quite a lot versus invest now. But there may well be an opportunity here that could be filtering through, hopefully. So as you can see here, analysts have increased approval odds for Litecoin, Solana, XRP ETFs to 95%, while placing a 90% bar on several others. There's over, I think 50 plus applications right now for altcoin ETFs, which is quite high. And I didn't think it was that many. So there's a lot happening. Plus, you've obviously, well, you can see it here actually. More than 20 altcoin filings await the SEC's decisions. That's not including all the other ones that have already been going on or still in play. So yeah, things are happening. Now, something that is a little bit different for a lot of people is obviously stable currency liquidity surged to 7.5%. What this means is there's a lot of money in stable currency just waiting off market, so to speak, and risk off capital. And the overall total of the market is relatively high in terms of Bitcoin. You can see that here. It's a large chunk. And altcoins alone are only 232 billion, maintaining stability amid ongoing volatility. Right now, because we are at such low levels, we're starting to slow down a little bit. So realistically, what's happening here is the fact that there is an indication of strong capital inflows into the cryptocurrency space because Tether has dropped a little bit in terms of that side of it. And there's probably more reasons to this, and I will talk about in terms of ETF volume. But what has happened is BTC plus Tether dominance hit 73.5%. That was mental when you think about it. And that's the situation we find ourselves in. We are looking at a period where it's kind of going against the grain a little bit in terms of my values, because I'm often saying when dominance and stable currency situation is high, it's time to buy. We are literally at that type of rotation vibe where we're thinking something's going to happen soon and we've got to be there for it. And that's where the risk is. And this is why I'm trading more than ever versus, say, investing. And we need to be very, very mindful of that. And again, it's not just this website before and the one I'm just showing now, but there's a lot of stuff here in terms of Bitcoin plus stables equals accumulation signal. We're talking about this 73.5%, and it's quite a historic level, and it's very, very high. Stable currencies are playing a bigger part in the market right now, which is why the dominance is different. And it brings me back to a couple of months ago in April and May. I was talking about a mini alt season that we were going to get, and it just totally rejected with a lot of things happening. And this is from the 13th of May. And you can see here, these are the sort of signals that we're looking for and expecting. And realistically, they're starting to show a little bit of a potential bounce incoming, potentially. But we'll need to kind of look at the analysis first. But what I will say is the BTC ETF inflows have been madness. 11-day streak right now, 588.6 million daily inflows yesterday. It's absolutely mental how much this is flying along. So yeah, Bitcoin supply shock incoming. So let's talk about Bitcoin in a very simple thing. I do talk a lot more about this on Patreon, but I am very, very optimistic about Bitcoin long term, and it has been holding this level. And I feel like we're now kind of, I would say, out of the woods in terms of further downside movement. Now, my biggest concern was, and it might still happen, I am still very cautious about Bitcoin in terms of the situation, because we have formed a high, formed a low, lower high, and a new low here, right? But this up here is a very, very strong relief move. And with this instability of what's been happening in the Middle East, it's going to create a bit of a fucking problem, basically. So it has kind of stabilized quite a bit. It's above the EMA 21 now. We're starting to look a bit better on the RSI. It's looking a bit better, but the structure still isn't perfect. We need to wait for a daily closure today, and then we'll see what it does. Bitcoin needs to stabilize. But let's talk about Ethereum. Ethereum/BTC has stalled a little bit here, and it is trying to chill, and it has been chilling a bit. But we did drop down the other day, which gives me a little bit of doubt, and we need to wait and see what happens here. But it had done pretty well to get out of that kind of mud area and stabilize, but it did drop down a bit. So we need to be very, very mindful of that. But what I will say is this: there could be opportunities for bounces here, especially if Bitcoin does well over the next couple of weeks. And more importantly, if people start to return to the market because, the situation around Bitcoin in the terms of the price. What people see is a really, really strong price in USD, and they don't look at this side of it. But realistically, it's still a bit of a dog's dinner. This is, in my opinion, the altcoin fuel for when things start to progress and, do better. Ethereum has struggled, and we know that. It's kind of obvious. So we need to keep an open mind to it. But that could flip on a sixpence like it did, as I say, in that May time where we were looking like, oh, hello. It just didn't materialize. Now, this is the total 3/BTC. If we are going to remove Tether from that, it looks the same, but it's just a different value, 0.32%. It went really low, and it still looks like an absolute dog's dinner. But realistically, this is a way to monitor the altcoin market, so to speak, and this is without Bitcoin and without Ethereum in there versus Bitcoin. What we're waiting for is essentially a break and a retest for a structural shift, and it hasn't happened yet. But realistically, this is one of the big things you need to keep an absolute open mind to and an absolute eye on. The thing is, a lot of people will be very bearish at the lows and very bullish at the tops. You need to be a little bit different. And it feels weird because, if you're bullish on altcoins, you feel like you got the opposite of a viewpoint now. My personal opinion is, I do believe that we are going to see these mini little kind of reliefs on altcoins, but they're not going to be like a full-on cyclical bang like there were in previous cycles, which I think is going to upset people because you're probably expecting it, but it's not going to happen just yet. It needs more liquidity and more juice, but what I will say is if ETFs do come online and the liquidity is low and people have given up psychology, it will probably do something and it probably will catch people off, but it may not create craziness like the last time, which is unfortunate. We could talk about other things as well, and I will in a minute, but the reality is here, Bitcoin dominance is still very, very high, and it's still trying to do more and more things in terms of going higher. What I was talking about before is obviously this is the stable currency side of it. I think mine's a bit wrong, to be fair, but you can see it is into the 70+%. And realistically, as I say, I should probably remove the certain things and add some things onto there in terms of stable currencies because it's a bit old, but it still gives you a good viewpoint. But again, as I alluded to it before in previous videos, we are looking at stable currency dominance, and this is the interesting point here. Again, another bit of the playbook you need to keep on your charts is what is the dominance of stable currencies do, because what this will do is if it goes down, it indicates rotation of capital. That doesn't mean directly into the likes of altcoins. It could go into Bitcoin too, obviously, or elsewhere, who knows. And also you got to factor in liquidations in this situation. When this falls and Bitcoin holds stable, it's usually a good indication that money is going to rotate. Hasn't happened yet, but realistically, when you look at that, yeah, we could be looking very, very interesting. Now, again, we can look at certain situations. We looked at the past before where we've hit these lows and we did very, very well. If I go into higher time frames, and you've seen this before, this is a previous little alt seasons that we've had where it has been pretty good, but not perfect. Are we going to continue going down? Now, this is a situation we need to find ourselves in. Are we going to reject this key level, and are we going to just rotate down a little bit into these levels? It may not be perfect, it may not be amazing for some people, but what you might find is trading opportunities, and those opportunities that will present themselves will make it a bit easier for you to play the game. So what am I doing? Well, for me, I'm not chasing the stupidity. I'm just stalking the big caps, really. Solana, XRP, for example, even SUI, Ethereum on the screen here, AVAX, Cardano, even Polkadot. There's some really good obvious setups in terms of potential bearish retests of areas, but I'm not just going off that. I'm looking at potential strength long term. Because the reason why I talk about that is because there is stuff that could happen in a sixpence and you need to be on the right side of it. At the minute, you can see this Ethereum chart. You could argue, yeah, it's bearish, but ultimately that could be a deviation fake out and it could actually be a lot of liquidity that have been trapped there and it could go even higher depending on what's going to happen. You could argue the exact same with Polkadot, right? I'm looking at this, right? And I'm thinking to myself, Polkadot looks like a really obvious short, realistically. But also it could form a lower high here and just continue going a bit higher. Because it's gone down so much recently, it's going to get probably a bigger relief bounce, realistically. That's kind of the situation. There's so many things out here when we're looking at them and thinking, well, some of them are holding up and some of them are not. But a lot of altcoins just look like a dog's dinner right now until they don't. And that's the situation we present ourselves in because they have had huge, horrible drops. There's going to be a relief round at some point. So I am not just jumping in craziness right now, even though everything looks very, very bearish. The idea is to see the weakness and follow it. If you see the strength, again, follow it. But right now, I think people are trying to get, hero moves, so to speak, and getting cut to bits. And I could argue myself in that one in terms of certain things that happened last week. So before I go, though, if you want to trade more, there's a link below to Blowfin. There is a war of whales going on in the next couple of days. It starts very, very soon, and it's going to go on for almost a month. So yeah, win some monies, get some trading value, get a lot of random coins along the way too. But yeah, even looking at these charts here, you're looking at the other /BTC. In my opinion, we may well be looking at certain situations where this will react at some random moment or a random ceasefire or a random ETF announcement, and it may well catch people out. So keep an open mind to it. But the trick is not to get yourself blown up and have perfect risk management. Anyone can trade the market. You've just got to be on the right side of it. Personally, right now, it's probably more short than bullish right now. But as I say, those shorts may not be forever because the market, as you can imagine, has gone down quite a lot, certainly of altcoins. In my Patreon, I will showcase the real-time kind of entries and risk zones that I'm looking for in a more detailed, up-to-date video, what I do on a Tuesday and on a Thursday on there. But yeah, just keep an open mind to the market. Anyways, watch the video from Monday. That might help you with certain situations as well.